Hi, I'm Rachel McLeod. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and emotional wellness coach, and I help people do the brain work for getting rid of symptoms of anxiety, depression, and traumatic stress. And so I want to talk about thought distortions. I didn't say it like that. Thinking errors. I want to talk about thinking errors and how to use these to actually get rid of symptoms of anxiety, depression, and traumatic stress. So when I see thinking errors, I'm like, okay, let's go. A lot of times we get frustrated by thinking errors. We want to make them stop. I want them to stop too. I want you to have accurate thinking. I want you to be able to think with accuracy. Um, and and I'm thinking about um, that reminds me of one of my favorite lines in The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace D. Wattles. It's on open source, and I, in my 20s, 30s, I went in there and changed to get The Science of Getting Rich to The Science of Self Mastery because you need a PDF. And I just went in there and edit and um, paste, copy. It replaced everything. And so the book read to me the science of getting self mastery because that's what I was into at that time. Because woo, the self was not mastering. Okay, um, so but anyway, my favorite line in there is he talks about. I don't know all of it. Okay, I'm gonna tell it to you like this. This is not a quote. This is how I received it, but it is pretty literal. He says that something, 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 and then you'll be able to think with sanity. And I must have just dropped the book and laughed because, boy, I was not doing a whole lot of thinking with sanity at that time of my life because I was doing a lot of thinking with, I just, the anxiety had me spinning in circles in so many areas. And so this was really the time when I learned about thinking errors. And I really went to town with looking through my inner world and finding thought distortions, thought those are called cognitive distortions, and in therapist speak. And I just would find them and help my brain resolve them, and I would get more and more healthy. And I would be more free to think with more expanded thinking, with more accurate thinking, and I was solving problems, which is really what I wanted. When you've got an anxiety, depression, or trauma disorder, you seem to be doing the same behaviors and getting the same outcome over and over and over again. It's like Groundhog's Day sometimes. And it's like if that day is full of anxiety or depression or traumatic stress, it gets old really fast. And the longer you stay there, the more challenging your life is, right? It feels like you're kind of digging down. Um, it's just, uh, right? It's just not a cool thing to be happening. So, but uh, from that experience and from my time with I really start. I'm looking for this all the time, and so I want you to look for this because it's so empowering. It was like the veil had been lifted, and I was like, oh, that's a problem. That's a cognitive distortion. At the time, I was reading the book Feeling Good. It's an oldie, it's a goodie, but it's about cognitive behavioral therapy, and which I've not found that it's helpful with resolving symptoms, but it's not really the key to resolving symptoms. We'll talk about that a little bit because it's not the key because it really relies heavily on the prefrontal cortex to do all the processing but and that part of the brain does this, but it's very slow. And so I like to hit this and quit this. I like to help people resolve their disorders in 2 to 6 months as opposed to 2 to 6 years. So I like to use the shortest way in, and that's by focusing on a different part of the brain. But okay, let me talk up to you about this whole thinking errors because I want you to hear it from me that I'm telling you that our thinking really needs to be accurate. Your brain's job is to create accurate thinking. Okay, that's its job. The more accurate thinking you have, the more that will reflect in your life. If your brain is only creating distortions, your life will look distorted. And so let's define some of these terms so that we're on the same page. Um, a cognitive distortion, cognitive means thought, that's the thought. A thought is a cognition, right? So a cognitive distortion is a distortion in the thought. And a distortion and a thought is when there's a truth that becomes somehow distorted. Either it's stretched a little too far, or it's a little too abbreviated, or there's some sort of distortion. You know, if you were to see this film and there was a little wiggling in it, that would be a distortion in the filming, right? In my camera. But in our thoughts, you can catch these because they aren't right. Okay. And but they're so close to the truth that sometimes you can't catch them. And cognitive distortions are very common in how we speak to one another. In they're common in our culture. They are here. And I remember from that book, Feeling Good, one of the first things he talked about was the more cognitive distortions you have, the more symptoms of depression you will have. And as far as I'm concerned, anxiety, depression, traumatic stress are all similar because they result from the same malfunctioning brain process. And so I would say that that could be stretched to anxiety, the more symptoms of anxiety, depression, or traumatic stress that you're experiencing. But we'll just be true to his statement there that, right? Who wants more depression? No, thank you. So when you find these distortions, you can actually get your brain to resolve them and really make them accurate and to take the distortion out, especially when you know what you're looking for. So, okay, and let me tell you this. Since the brain's job is to help you create accurate thinking, its job is to do that situation by situation. Like it's doing that all day long. And you'll tell the areas where you have really beautiful function, your brain has been able to complete that task really well. I see this happening in people who are very successful in business, but have a terrible time in relationships or in parenting. They just struggle. And they're like, I am smarter than this, but I cannot behave better. And I keep falling into the same traps, right? One area is working well. They have a lot of accurate thinking there. And one area is not. There's a lot of disturbances in that. Okay. Um, and there's a lot of symptoms. If you're yelling at your kid and you don't want to, that's because you're experiencing symptoms of anxiety, depression, and traumatic stress. If you look under the hood, you will find it. Um, if you're experiencing emotional eating, right, it's because, and you don't want to be, then it's because under the hood you will find symptoms of anxiety, depression, or traumatic stress. Okay. And so, but the clue, we're looking for clues to find these symptoms because we can get the brain to get those symptoms out of your life, but we got to find those symptoms. And these inaccurate thoughts, these thought disturbances, errors in thinking, they pinpoint right where the brain was not able to do its job well. It was not able to create accurate thinking. Okay. And so those are massive clues that we can use to help your brain get to the root issues, resolve the root and the symptoms and the inaccurate thinking, and start to pump out accurate thinking. And so let's talk about what accurate thinking is here for a second. Um, well, let me tell you, the brain's job is to combine. I have to turn this heater off. Okay, the brain's job is to combine all this internal information and stimuli, internal information, thoughts, feelings, um, flashback information, past memories, right? Its job is to take all of this stuff and the stuff we're getting from the external world, mix it all together up in here in our brain, mix it all together and pop out accurate thinking. Okay, um, that's its job, and it will do that the best it can. At some point, um, it's going to just give you what it's got. Especially if you're like, I need an answer now. The brain's going to say, well, here, take that, and it could be not very good, right? And it could be good. You're going to see. If you try it and it wasn't very accurate, and somebody was like, well, you forgot this piece of information, that's pretty direct feedback that your brain wasn't able to take in all the information and create something accurate. And so that's its job, right? And we're going to help it with that job here in a second. But um, your brain's job is to provide you with the thoughts for the situation. So I'm talking about this from a different perspective because many of us this was me. I lived in the world in a very one dimensional place, very flat. What I said was what I did. What I did was what I, whatever. I was just living life, right? I'm talking about, let's come under back behind the thoughts for a second. Let's come back behind the emotions. Let's come into the brain function and look at all of the stuff from there. And when you look at from there, um, you see that what you're doing is a product of brain function. It's a product of how your brain was able to synthesize all this information, thoughts, feelings, emotions, memories, and create for you how you're going to move forward in the world. You cannot do anything without your brain supplying you with this. Your brain will be doing this all the time. So if you can get your brain to be more accurate and more accurate, your how you live your life, how you show up on the one-dimensional plane of living, doing, being present in the now, that stuff is going to be altered and improved automatically because you came into the back here and started doing this work to help your brain actually do a fundamental part accurate. Okay. Boy, I have never explained this before, so please stay with me. This is a wild one. Um, so, okay, so when your brain does this, we want accurate thinking. Lots of people who have mastered a skill have accurate ways of thinking about the skill. Like if you're a violinist, you have accurate ways of thinking about the how to move your fingers for the specific song that you have. If you go and the specific type of music you do, right? You can rock, pretty much crush any of those things. But let's say you try freestyling and maybe you don't have that yet, and so you would need to build that. Okay. So in this area, you have a lot of accuracy, and you can tell because it's on point and it's precise. Um, then we have somewhat accuracy. And then we have places where there is no accuracy, right? That we are, and it's really frustrating to talk to those people that have that about you, right? When they see you, the internal information that's coming up and the external information that's coming up is bringing up more of their their past projections and ideas, feelings and thoughts, and they're projecting them onto you. And you're like, whoa, I never said that. And they're like, yes, you did. And this and that. And you look this way. And that means this. And they've assigned all this meaning to you. And it's not accurate to who you are and what your intention is. And those sorts of things. That is very frustrating and very, very hurtful. This is some of our interactions that are very traumatizing to us and traumatizing to our children. This is why we really want our brains to create more and more accurate thinking wherever we are. Okay. And the part of the brain that does that is the front of the brain, right? And that's where our morals and our values and our reasoning is, and all of our skills and our understandings are all there, right? And so that's the part of the brain where we're able to look at multiple perspectives. Um, that's the part of the brain where we're able to figure out how to put all of that combination together in a way that creates thriving. That part of the brain will also review its work because it'll send you out to go do the thing it just made for you. And then it'll do it and say, we need a little bit more of this and a little bit less attitude here. Let's try that again. And the next thing you know, it'll improve and improve and improve. I am constantly assessing for this with clients because it tells me what their brain is able to make and what it is not able to make. If we have panic attacks happening, there where this process isn't functioning right, and we can open it up to help the brain create the accurate thinking there. The brain is thinking something is dangerous in there, and so there's I don't know if we would call this a cognitive distortion because usually it's before cognition, but there's a distortion in there, and the brain's job is to resolve that. But we are talking today about cognitive distortions. Um, so that's what a cognitive distortion is. I'm going to talk about what they are. There are 15 types. If you see these things, these are clues that the brain has not been able to make the thought accurate yet. And some of this is because we're programmed like this from our culture around us. And some of this is because our brain hasn't been able to review. It hasn't come into our awareness that, hey, this is a problem, number one. And two, it hasn't reviewed it as if it was upgrading a problem. Okay. I'm talking to you about this a lot as a functionist because I want you to get rid of these symptoms. That's really like, I want you to understand what they are. I want you to recognize them. I want you to know how to resolve them. And I want you to get them out of your life. Not them necessarily. Like, you will get them out, right? But I want you to get out I want you to help your brain do its work of resolving that issue at the root and really making beautiful things for you. And you'll know because actually, when you go do the thing you helped your brain create, it'll go well. It'll go with its symptoms will not show up there. You will be able to connect better. You will be able to see people more accurately. You will be able to create more connection between you and your loved ones because they're like, oh my gosh, you see me, you get me. That's accurate. Yes, on point. When you have those kind of connections with yourself or others or a project that you're working on, that is a connection light bulb moment, right? That's when love sparks. That's where, woo, pride and like joy and I did it, and that's where delight happens, and there's a lot of magic right there. And the fastest way in here is to help your brain create that for you, in my opinion. Okay, so whenever I'm doing this work, because I don't follow cognitive behavioral therapy, I love it and I think that there's a beautiful time for it, but I will really use this along the way and um, as a guide. Let me see if I'm saying this stuff how I want to say it. Um, but I teach people this in the flow when they start to have when they this starts to happen when they get at this level that they're ready to get more refined and actually go after more advanced things like cognitive distortions, right? And why I say this is really advanced, and many of you may be here now, is because a lot of times when you have an anxiety, depression, and trauma disorder, everything's moving like this. And we have to do the work to get that to slow down. So, and pull symptoms out of there and to resolve enough symptoms that you can get to the finer details of your brain function. And then you're like, hey, there's one of those thought distortions. Now it's time to go after the thought distortion, okay? But if you're having panic attacks all the time, probably we should resolve the panic before this little thought disturbance. Because panic attacks let us know that your system thinks it's going to die, right? And so it's very difficult to look for a thought when your whole system thinks your physical life is in danger. Okay, so there's a time for this, but some of you are right here, and so I want you to see that this can really crack the code. This is a more advanced stuff, right? But it can really crack the code for you and resolve many symptoms, okay, and lead you to the root of the trauma, anxiety, depression that is still remaining, even though you may have been doing therapy for years, you may have been doing tapping or EMDR, you may have been doing all these things, but you still have symptoms and you want to get rid of them or whatever. You're now processing generational trauma, you know, and how that's influenced you and your family. Whatever you're working on, these cognitive distortions are um, gosh, they really point us directly to malfunctioning brain processes and where our brain needs support, where we can jump in and help it and create really big change. And what's really cool about this, I've seen it happen over and over and over again. If you catch the brain in one of these spots and help it resolve it, it will say, oh, here's that thinking again, and it'll resolve it by itself. And here's that thinking. And if it can't, it'll let you know because that's what it does. It will bring this stuff into your awareness and say, hey, can you help me with this? So we just need to, sometimes we feel like it's attacking us, like it's chasing us, symptoms are chasing us. No, actually, your brain's asking you for some help. That's why it's chasing you. It's like, can you help me? Can we get this into the part of the brain that can resolve this? Because I can't not move with this, right? So we want to work together with our brains. Okay. There are 15 cognitive distortions. I'm not going to go through all of those today. And this is what I do. I go online, I Google cognitive distortions, common cognitive distortions. I get a PDF and I will say, hey, have you seen these to my client? Or we'll look for one specifically and the one that they're dealing with, and then I'll pull something up for them and go in that direction. This is widely available stuff. This is common knowledge, but it's one thing to know it, because once you know it, you will start seeing it happen everywhere. But I don't want you just to see it and watch it pass you by. I want you to grab a couple And I want you to help your brain process it. Okay? Because we want to get this stuff. This stuff has to, um, it's not showing up for no reason. Okay, let me tell you one. The most popular one, that's our flag, that the brain is not doing its job and not able to do its job, is all or nothing thinking. That is a cognitive distortion because it's not accurate. It is not true that all dentists are evil, right? I had to make one up. So as not to offend anyone, right? Um, there's some really big ones we have in our culture about men and genders and this and that, women and whatever. Those are all or nothing thinking. They're also another one, which is called labeling, um, because nobody is all of anything, right? And if we treat it like it's all, if we treat all um, hair the same, you're gonna have problems, and I'm not gonna let you near my hair. Okay, we're just not. All hair is not the same. It's not accurate, and it will create much distress in me as you try to brush my hair with a fine tooth comb, right? Um, where that would work for this person, it won't here, and that's what will happen in our life when we have all or nothing thinking. We will have some great connections where yes, in this situation that works. In this one, it causes problems. This one, it causes problems. This one, it causes problems. The brain is the survival system loves to go back and forth, right? Its native language is safe, not safe, safe, not safe. It doesn't take into gray shades of gray. It doesn't say this is kind of safe in this moment. We want it to. We want it to say, okay, when these three factors are here, it's safe. When these four factors are here, it's not safe. We want it to get that intricate and that skillful, and it will. That's its job, and it gets really good at that. That's how most of us can drive cars without panic attacks, right? All cars are not safe. Every car is safe. If we act like every time everything is safe, we're going to have problems because it's not accurate. It's a distorted way of thinking. If we come over here and say every car is inaccurate, is not safe, that's a distortion, right? So we have all or nothing thinking. All is safe, none is safe. That's the survival part of the brain, and that's actually the part of the brain that stops healing from happening. And so we can really take these two, we can, there's some exercises you can do to get the brain to take these two and start weaving them together and say what's really true, what's not. And so when you do this, you're pulling up all of the subconscious programming for it's all safe, and all of the subconscious programming and everything you've learned in your body and your mind, about what's not safe. And you get your brain to do this work right here. This is how I do it. In my mind, this is what it looks like. Or it looks like this, where you just hold your brain together and say, "Hey, you see these two guys? What are we doing here?" And you're drawing your attention to these two things, and your brain gets to spend more time figuring that out. And you can watch it, and this is where I have people apply interventions. I love to help people use emotional freedom techniques, thought field therapy, EMDR, energy medicine. These ones work specifically with the survival system and bringing the whole brain together to do the work, instead of having the survival system go into survival mode and override the other ones and drag them along into survival mode, so you can't use them for actually processing the information that's trying to move and trying to help you process what's happening and live well, right? And so these interventions work wonderful. That, and they also, what they do is it's like you can sit there and turn the brain crank with them. Go brain, go, go, go. And you just sit here and crank the brain using an intervention. I'm modeling emotional freedom techniques. Um, and the brain is empowered to really start to take down the barriers for um, that keeps them separate into all or nothing, and also to really start sorting things and seeing what's accurate and what's not accurate. And the brain is very smart. Some of this stuff, some of the reasons why the brain isn't able to, because the brain needs to have the black, the white, or the all, the nothing. It's also called black or white thinking, but I think they're changing it due to advancements in society. Um, okay, all or nothing. And the brain needs to also make all the things in the middle. because there are many, many truths along the way, right? Electricity is dangerous. Electricity is safe. Okay. Electricity is dangerous when you're in a puddle. It needs to keep, it has a data bank, and it needs to be accurate. And so there's going to be stuff in there that we've learned in past situations that felt true but weren't true. It's another cognitive distortion, called emotional reasoning. Let me see if it's on this one. I like that one a lot. Emotional reasoning, yeah. Um, so, but its job is to make all these parts for you, because it wants you want it to do the one that's accurate, and you want it to be able to be flexible and adaptable enough to create um, the right interpretation for the right situation, right? If your child stole something from your bedroom one time, and every single time from there on you treated them like they stole something from your bedroom, that's not accurate. You're going to miss your child, right? But if your brain is stuck with that, then you can help it get to work and say, okay, that happened one time, it hasn't happened yet. What do we think? Let's run this process of making this thought accurate. Give me some accurate thinking here. Okay. And we can do that, and we can get these things refined so that they're on point, right? A lot of the reasons the brain can't do this is emotional distress. The fact that maybe our child stole something from our bedroom created so much distress within us emotionally. We felt so betrayed that we weren't able to continue the healing process. Betrayal is registered in the brain as pain, physical pain. And so the survival system will jump up and start pushing all of that emotion away from the processing process. And so that information doesn't get through. So every time we see our kid doing something, our brain makes the association between the past event, and all that betrayal comes through and shuts down the process again. And so over and over and over and over this happens, and you're stuck. And so we can really help you get accurate thinking here by getting your brain to move that, to open the gate and let the betrayal come in, because it is something that did take place in that moment. Get that processed, and then it's information. Now your brain needs to understand that your child can go into your room and steal something from you. That doesn't mean he's going to do it every time. That doesn't mean she loves doing it. That doesn't mean she's never going to learn. That doesn't mean she's going to become a thief. He's going to become a robber in 20 years, right? That's when we spiral out and we're projecting into the future. And I know if you got anxiety, you've been there already. Maybe not with this particular situation, but if something happens now, we've like projected out some really bad scenarios. That's all a form of all or nothing thinking gone. And it's really a form of the brain's process um, not functioning properly. This betrayal isn't getting out, so you're using it and fueling future projections as opposed to processing it. And okay, that's one possibility here. What are the other possibilities? Right? Let's really give this some accurate thinking, some good thought. Um, the other things that can really emotional distress is at the root of this. Emotional distress is at the root of flashbacks and past memories that can come in and stop us from creating accurate thinking. If we have a big some people's brain has a thing where it's not safe to sleep, it's not safe to relax, right? And so they can't sleep, they're not sleeping well, they're moving all the time. Um, Gosh, I wanted to say something about that. Anywho, and some of that can become because of nightmares, right? It's like their brain has learned, if we go to sleep, we're going to have a nightmare. Okay, not exactly true, somewhat true, but we need to process the past nightmares so that the brain can get a really good look at what was actually going on with the nightmares, and then get more precise and say, okay, it is difficult to fall asleep. Let me regroup here with that one. We want it to be accurate, and I don't know exactly what it would say afterwards. Like, I want to make up a scenario that really brings the whole circle together, but we want it to understand that it's not always not safe to sleep. We don't want it running on that program. We want it to stretch it. We want it to make it more and more accurate, which it does. And I'm breaking this stuff down very into minutia for you, and perhaps maybe more so than is needed. But I hope you can look underneath this. But really, when we're looking at stuff, when you find a cognitive distortion and you use an intervention and help your brain process these things, you will notice accurate thinking happening. You will notice more and more accurate thinking, and you really keep at it until it really is working. And obviously, we're not going to go to all or nothing thinking here and think that you're going to have 100% accurate thinking in every situation, but we want to see your brain doing what it's supposed to do, which is get better and better and better and better. That's what brains can be doing, and in my opinion, should be doing. And they will if they have the right support, really. And so what I'm hoping you get from this is that this is a little bit more of an advanced training, but that you start to look at these cognitive distortions. This is just one. Anywhere you find these, you have opportunities to help your brain become more and more accurate. Okay, let me tell you a couple more. Another overgeneralizing. Overgeneralizing is that all these people, all this homework, all of this subject is X, Y, or Z. That is boring, it's difficult, I'm not good at it, those sorts of things. That's overgeneralizing, seeing a pattern based upon a single event. And or being overly broad in drawing a conclusion. Brains do this because it's easy. And if they get stuck, they'll get a little frustrated and they'll just say blah. And you'll get this idea. Well, fine, here, have that. It's half-baked, but better than nothing. But these, yes, we want them to be more accurate and to go extra good. Overcome the obstacles to creating the thinking that we want. Mental filter, only paying attention to certain types of evidence. Noticing our failures, but not seeing our successes. That's a cognitive distortion. You can find that and help your brain. Like, hey, brain, why are we only seeing the negative stuff? What's up with that? And using your intervention, right? And that's a really great way to bring that to present, bring that, start filtering in the positive as well. That's important. This is really, really important. And it's so fun that it's just because all of these different problems are just because the brain can't complete its process. Anyway, I think that's phenomenal. And this really makes my work more, I always know what we're doing, right? It's like, just help the brain finish. Help the brain finish this. Oh, that was not well done, brain. Let's go. Where'd you get stuck? Let's get in there and fix that. Okay, good. All right, much better. Well done. It makes things very simple when you see all of these things, not as I'm bad or this or that is incomplete. Your brain didn't get to finish its job. It wants to make you something awesome in there. It wants you to be an awesome parent. It wants you to have a great body image. It wants you to be able to exercise and reach your goals and get that raise and build that business and start that hobby. It wants all of those things for you. And so when it's doing these things, it's really great because we can help. Another one is disqualifying the positive. So discounting the good things that have happened or that you've done for some reason or another. This is like when people give you a compliment and you say, oh, well, everybody, or when some great things happen, he's like, yeah, but what about all this other stuff? The emphasis goes to that direction. This is a cognitive distortion. That's the brain's inability to blend them together, that there's this really good thing happening and there's some not so good things happening. And instead of blending these two things together to make something that's like a rainbow of colors, it's going to the all or nothing. Well, because this positive thing can't be true because these things aren't either, right? That's not it. So we want the brain to be able to blend these and make beautiful things out of it. And some of which would be, hey, you know what, we need to practice something different over here. But over here, this is really wonderful. Or, we need to love and accept ourselves because maybe this is this is who we are, whatever. But okay, another cognitive distortion is jumping to conclusions. When you don't have all the information and you just decide, right? You're kind of using, what are you pulling from? You're pulling from probably past evidence, not necessarily what's accurate in the moment now. And that's when the past is stronger than the present moment, that's a problem. And we want the brain to figure that out. And then we want the past information to be processed because it's valuable. But it doesn't mean that it's here, and we need the brain to figure out, is that part of this moment right here or not? Right? And so that's where it gets to, we want to help that connection happen. Magnifying or catastrophizing and minimizing. So blowing things out of proportion, which is catastrophizing, or inappropriately shrinking something to make it seem less important. Those are kind of I can't cope with the truth of this, so I'm going to go up or down. Or I feel too ashamed to look this thing directly in its face, so I'm going to shrink this. Or I need to go into a self-punishing cycle right now because I made a mistake, so I'm going to tell everybody so everybody can kind of beat me with the emotional shame stick, whether they will or not. I mean, we have these unconscious things that we're doing. But this is another place where we want accuracy in thought. Emotional reasoning. This is assuming that because we feel a certain way what we think must be true, right? This is when this happens is people are saying I'm not getting any better. Nobody wants me here. Um, I'm not worthy. I feel like because we feel unworthy, it must be that we're not worthy. That's really the best definition of it. Because we feel like we're not getting better, all of a sudden we pull out our stamp, we're not getting better. Because we feel like no one likes me here, we pull out our stamp, no one likes me here. And we'll start acting like that. We don't know if that's accurate or not, but here we go, we're doing it. And that's called emotional reasoning. And I would say for that, the brain has not been able to process enough emotion and to get enough emotion to the front of the brain. And the emotion is fueling survival system activity, which is not rational, right? I don't, it's not a rational, logical place back there. And we don't want it fueled inaccurately, right? We want the survival system fueled accurately. Actually, when you actually are in danger, fuel that thing up. If you're not actually in danger, we don't want it running off as if you were. And so emotional reasoning, we want to pull all the emotions through your brain's process for processing emotion and creating accurate thinking. So emotional reasoning is another type of distortion. There's truth happening. There's something happening with your emotions that's indicating and picking up that something is not right. But instead of figuring out what that thing is, you just say, it's this. Not true, right? Not accurate. And the more you live with that and you paint your life with those colors, the more depression you will have. Okay, another cognitive distortion is shoulds and musts. So using critical words like should, must, ought can make us feel guilty, like we have already failed. If we apply shoulds to other people, the result is often frustration. So these are things that are not accurate. I should have X, Y, and Z. Said who? Right? Is that actually what you should have done? And if so, let's pull that out and really put some accurate wording in there. But those are actually words that a lot of times we will try to motivate ourselves with these emotions because that's how we were motivated as children or in past experiences. And so we'll have our brain is smart. It's like, oh, I know how to do this. We'll do that thing that mom did, and off you go. So we'll have our own ways of creating those ways. And these words can be really big clues of where your brain is kind of taking the easy way out instead of which the easy way out is using all the neural pathways that have already been constructed and aligned how they've been aligned, right? I mean, they're already there. You just surf on them. They're like well-paved roads, you know? When you're making new neural pathways connections, it's like going over gravel. I mean, who wants to do that? We're going through a thick forest and getting hit in the face sometimes, you know? We like ease and we like to use the stuff we've already used, even though your life will actually start slapping you across the face. And like the forest analogy, you're going through there and it's scratching you all up. But the road is paved, right? And so So we like so when but when you hear yourself say a should, there's a brain function issue under there. And if you on your way down to the root, you're going to find symptoms of anxiety, depression, or traumatic stress. And you're in there, you're going to find some stuck old emotion, which is the root. Um, so some symptoms of anxiety, depression, traumatic stress you can find are there are things like procrastination, shrinking back, hiding, avoiding, withdrawing, arguing, irritability, like the angry outbursts. Those are some of the symptoms that you're going to find. Those are symptoms of anxiety, depression, traumatic stress. They are symptoms of this malfunctioning, incomplete process um, that we're trying to help the brain complete. Um, Labeling is another cognitive distortion. It is where you're assigning labels to ourselves or other people.